Before his fraud was exposed, Jussie Smollett's supporters, including a number of members of Congress, claimed that he was the victim of a modern-day attempted lynching. Smollett's hoax fell apart in the end, but only barely, partly because he was completely incompetent. He paid by check, for example. But if he hadn't been incompetent, he would still be considered a victim. He would be a hero because victimhood is power. Virginia Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax, meanwhile, has certainly learned that lesson. Fairfax is accused of sexually assaulting 2 separate women in the early 2000s. Instead of simply defending himself against those charges, Fairfax is taking the offensive by becoming offended. He isn't a victimizer, he's telling us. He's a victim, too, and therefore holy in a way. Criticizing him, he said yesterday in a speech at the Capitol in Virginia, is like trying to lynch someone more than a century ago. Watch this.
I've heard much about anti-lynching on the floor of this very Senate, where people were not given any due process whatsoever. Yet we stand here in a rush to judgment with nothing but accusations and no facts. And we decide that we are willing to do the same thing.
It's really a lot like lynching. Now, under normal circumstances, anyone who said something like that would be laughed off the stage. But this is 2019, and the cult of victimhood is at its peak, and so it might actually work. The same feminist groups and politicians that hounded Brett Kavanaugh for weeks have barely said anything about Fairfax at all. Now that he's compared them to a lynch mob, they won't say anything. You watch. Well, we warned you last week in this program that Jussie Smollett did not invent hate crimes. In the past few years, they've actually become alarmingly common. The overwhelming majority of so-called hate crimes that have received national attention have turned out to be false, at least the ones we could check. Another example just come out of Jackson, Michigan. The home of transgender activist Nikki Jolly burned down in 2017. It was a horrible fire. You may remember it. It killed all 5 of his pets. At first, the fire was considered a hate crime and investigated as such. Now, police say Jolly is the one who started the fire. According to his friends, he was upset that a recent gay rights parade hadn't sparked protests. Jackson, Michigan, it turned out, is not a very hateful place, so hatred had to be created. Seeing a theme here? Yes, you are. So is Bradley Campbell. He's a sociologist and author of the book, The Rise of Victimhood Culture. He joins us tonight. Mr. Campbell, thanks very much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Are you surprised by this? It seems like our society has created a pretty strong incentive to create fake hate crimes.
I'm not surprised by it. I've been interested in hate crime hoaxes for a long time now, and I've been following them. And it's not that, of course, hate crimes are more common than hate crime hoaxes, and they're a problem. But it is interesting that so many of the cases that do get a lot of public attention and media attention do turn out to be hoaxes. And I first started seeing these things mainly on college campuses. And now with the Jussie Smollett case, if that turns out to be as police are alleging, this will be the most famous hate crime hoax, and obviously not on a college campus. So it seems that some of the cultural things that are enabling hate crime hoaxes, enabling their success, might be spreading from college campuses to other areas of society. And I don't think it's that surprising. People lie about all kinds of things. There are all kinds of hoaxes and con artist scams and things like that. People will lie when it benefits them to do so, or at least some people will, not most people, but some people will lie when there's a benefit to it and when the lie will be believed. And so we have to understand what is the context in which these kinds of things provide some kind of benefit and in which they're believed.
Right.
And so if it's a matter, if people are given a kind of status for victimhood, and that's what my co-author and I argued in our book, that a new victimhood culture was arising, first among activists on college campuses, and then it began to spread elsewhere, where victimhood came to act as a kind of status. If you're perceived as a victim of oppression, you're treated differently, and the idea is that you should have a different kind of credibility. So when people make claims about oppression, then often it's thought that there's a moral imperative to believe them. And that makes these kinds of hoaxes more successful, and also provides people then attract sympathy and fame and support, so it might give them individual benefits and also help them advance a political cause.
Yeah. Grotesque and sad, and we're going to see more of it for exactly the reasons that you just outlined. Thank you very much for that. Appreciate it.